Now, culture or Sanskriti. Culture means Sanskriti. Sanskriti comes from Sanskar, which means transformation or refinement or purification of thought, behavior, conduct, and nature of human beings. While this is the internal aspect of culture, its external aspect is reflected in the numerous practices prevalent in the outward day to day life of the people. Culture can be said to be comprised of certain specific principles, values, beliefs, faiths, as well as some practices, observances, rites, rituals, festivals, ceremonies, provisions, arrangements, customs, traditions, which the human beings inhabiting in a particular geographical area have been applying and adopting in different spheres of their day to day life upon the earth plane. Those specific principles govern the thought, behavior, conduct, and nature of the people in their day to day life and living, and those practices are observed by the people in their day to day outward life and living. Thus, those principles and practices form the part and parcel of and constitute their particular way of life. Those specific principles and practices also give a separate identity to the group of people inhabiting in that geographical area and distinguish their culture from the cultures of the people of other geographical areas. Before we discuss further on this topic, it is very pertinent to note here that Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti refers to the composite culture of thousands and one distinct and unique cultures of various sections of people belonging to different localities, states, union territories, nationalities, religions, communities, castes, creeds, colors, classes, sections, etc. of the vast, diverse and pluralistic country. Therefore, Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti is comprised of the several cultures of all such divisions or sections of people living in this country. In this small discourse, it is not possible to discuss the entire Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti. Therefore, we will confine our brief discussion on Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti, also known as Hindu Sanskriti, as we will discuss later, which is being professed since the most ancient times by the people who belong to Hindu religion only and who are the original inhabitants of India or Bharata and who constitute the vast majority of the population of this country. Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti or Hindu Sanskriti means the specific principles, values, beliefs, faiths and practices, observances, rites, rituals, festivals, ceremonies, provisions, arrangements, customs, traditions, which the Hindu people or the Hindu Janata of the country known as India or Bharatavarsha have been applying and adopting in different spheres of activities in their day to day lives. Those principles, values, beliefs, faiths, etc., and those practices, observances, rites, rituals, festivals, ceremonies, provisions, arrangements, customs, traditions, etc., are derived from the holy Hindu scriptures and the holy lives of the Hindu rishis, munis, saints, sages of the sacred land of Bharatavarsha. The said practices have been exhorted by the Hindu rishis, munis, saints, sages of the sacred land of Bharatavarsha. After examining those practices, from the spiritual, religious, philosophical, social, scientific, rational angles, and after applying those in their day to day personal lives, and after finding those practices as most worthy and most beneficial in human life. Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti is also known as Hindu Sanskriti because since the most ancient times, the people, the original inhabitants of this country are being called as Hindus, and therefore the culture of Sanskriti adopted by them is called Hindu Sanskriti. Much later, the people belonging to other religions also commenced living in this country, India or Bharata. Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti is based on the Vedas and therefore it is known as Vaidika Sanskriti or Vedic Sanskrit. The Vedas are said to have come from the heart of the Almighty Supreme Being through his nostrils. The Vedas are said to have been revealed by God to the great rishis and seers of the sacred land of Bharatavarsha. The Vedas are the records of the super intuitive experiences gained by those great ancient rishis and seers. Therefore, those are called Apauruseya or entirely superhuman without any human error. The Vedas are the most ancient and the oldest scriptures of the world, as nobody knows when they were revealed by God to the ancient rishis and seers. The Vedas are universal, unique, unparalleled, sublime, lofty, grand, greatest, and the ideal scriptures of the world and are meant for the entire human race upon the earth plane. Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti or Hindu Sanskriti comprises many such principles and practices of the people living in this sacred land of Bharatavarsha. Some most important such principles are four grand goals, Purushartha Chatushtaya of human life, four stages, Ashrama Chatushtaya of human life, four classes, Varna Chatushtaya, law of action, Karma Phala Siddhanta, and the doctrine of rebirth, Punarjanma Siddhanta. The practices, observances, rites, rituals, festivals, ceremonies, provisions, arrangements, customs, traditions, etc. of the Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti or Hindu Sanskriti are prevalent or found in different spheres of human activities in the day-to-day life of the Hindu people of this country, including births, marriages, deaths, food, fashions, dresses, hairstyle, dance, drama, art, music, sculpture, scriptures, literature, worship, etc. Those principles and practices constitute the part and parcel of their specific way of life. In this discourse, we will discuss in brief about some very important principles and practices in the following words. One important principle of Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti or Hindu Sanskriti is the principle of four grand goals, Purushartha Chatushtaya of human life. Those are dharma or ethical value, artha or economic value, kama or vital value, and moksha or spiritual value. The first principle or grand goal of human life is dharma or ethical value. Dharma generally means performance of one's prescribed duties, keeping in view his nature or varna and stage, ashrama, in life. Dharma is also generally stated as righteousness expressed in the day-to-day conduct in human life. Further, dharma means ethical values like truthfulness, non-violence, purity, honesty, love, compassion, forgiveness, tolerance, selflessness, brotherhood, etc. These values are said to be the essentials or the internal aspect of dharma. These values are common human values and are universal in nature, meant to be practiced by all human beings upon this earth plane, irrespective of their religion, nationality, caste, creed, faith, and belief. Dharma also means different practices, observances, customs, traditions, rites, rituals, ceremonies, festivals, methods of worship of God, etc., which the people belonging to various dharmas or religions have adopted in their day-to-day lives. These practices are said to be the non-essentials or the external aspect of dharma. These practices are different in different dharmas or religions, faiths, beliefs, castes, creeds, sects, nations, etc. of the world, and are meant to be practiced by the respective followers of different dharmas or religions of the world. These differences are due to, as our saints and sages say, different types of aptitudes, temperaments, capacities, etc. of different human beings, and also different social needs and cultural traditions of different sections of people in different historical times and in different geographical areas in different parts of the world. Dharma is also said by our saints and sages to be the relationship amongst human beings, the world, and God, the Creator. Dharma is regarded as the first, foremost, foundational, and basic value in human life. This is also the primary value or primary grand goal of ideal human life. Dharma is indispensable in human life. The second principle or grand goal of human life is artha or economic value. Artha means earning of money and acquiring of material wealth. Human beings need artha to meet the basic and other secular necessities of life of themselves and their family members, such as food, clothing, house, medicines, education for children, their marriages, engagement in some occupation or business or profession, etc., in order to help or ensure their earthly physical existence and to live a reasonably comfortable life upon the earth plane. They require artha also to meet their various kinds of social and national needs and obligations. In addition, they need artha to carry out their dharmic or religious, adhyatmic or spiritual pursuits of life. Artha is the secondary value or secondary grand goal of ideal human life. Artha is inevitable in human life. The third principle or grand goal of human life is kama or vital value. It means fulfillment of various types of worldly and secular vital human desires like physical, biological, mental, psychological and emotional desires. With the help of artha or money and material wealth, human beings fulfill their vital desires. Like artha, kama is the secondary value or secondary grand goal of ideal human life. Kama is also inevitable in human life. The fourth principle or grand goal of human life is moksha or spiritual value. It means attainment of moksha or liberation of soul from the bondage of births and deaths, or union of the individual soul with the supreme soul, its original source. It is called self-realization or God realization. Moksha is the supreme value or supreme grand goal of human life. Like dharma, moksha is also the primary grand goal of ideal human life. Moksha is indispensable, rather most indispensable in human life. Next, let us discuss in brief about the principle of four stages, ashrama chatushtaya of human life. Those are brahmacharya ashrama or student life, grihastha ashrama or householder's life, vanaprastha ashrama or retired life, and sannyasa ashrama or renounced life. The first stage of human life is brahmacharya ashrama or student life. Student life and youth period is extremely precious because during this period the human mind remains in a very tender and impressionable state, and therefore this stage is very conducive for building one's life. During this stage, one equips himself with all that is necessary in order to live the next three stages of human life successfully, happily, and peacefully. During this stage, he builds his life by laying the foundation properly and strongly with good physical health, powerful mind, noble character, and ethical conduct, and simultaneously living a life of utmost celibacy or brahmacharya. He also builds the superstructure of his future life completely, properly, strongly, and nicely with adherence to righteousness or ethical standard, acquiring of money and material wealth, fulfillment of vital worldly desires, and attainment of liberation of soul from the bondage of births and deaths for living a successful human life. That is, for living the human life economically, prosperously, as well as spiritually, happily, and peacefully. The second stage of life is grihastha ashrama or householder's life. Having built a proper and strong foundation of life during the student life and youth period, the students get married and enter into householder's life. During such life, the householders procreate children in order to keep up their lineage and fulfill the divine wish of Lord Brahma, the creator. That is, continuing the creation. They earn money and acquire material wealth in order to meet their day-to-day basic and other secular necessities of the earthly life of themselves and their family members, such as food, clothing, house, medicines, education of children, their marriages, engagement in some occupation, business, vocation, profession, etc., in order to ensure their physical existence and to live a reasonably comfortable life upon the earth plane, meet their various kinds of family, social, and national needs, duties, responsibilities, and obligations, carry out their dharmic, that is religious, and adhyatmic or spiritual pursuits in life, etc. During grihastha ashram or householder's life, they also perform their duties and responsibilities towards the people belonging to other three ashramas, that is brahmacharya ashrama, vanaprastha ashrama, and sannyasa ashrama. The third stage of life is vanaprastha ashrama or retired life. Having fulfilled the duties of the householder's life as stated, raising children, arranging their education, making them capable of standing on their own legs, and finishing their marriage and householders and finishing their marriages, the householders take retirement from their professional life as well as family life and lead a retired life. With enough leisure time and vast professional experience and expertise, they render selfless service or paropakara to the people of the society during this stage. Also, the husbands and wives gradually start remaining away from their family life, and they together start devoting their time for pilgrimage, study, prayer, meditation, etc. Thus, they start preparing themselves for the last journey. Then they start getting detached from the secular life and attached to the spiritual life. This stage is thus a preparation for the fourth and the last stage of human life. The fourth stage of life is sannyasa asrama, or the life of renunciation. This is the last stage of human life. This is the sunset period in one's life when all worldly relationship and connections are now coming to a close. During this period, one devotes his full time in his spiritual pursuit of yoga and Vedanta and lives a completely spiritual life. He detaches his mind from the passing world and fixes the same upon the Almighty Supreme Lord. He remains absorbed in contemplation of God and moves towards God experience or self realization. This is the supreme grand goal of human life, which results in liberation of the soul from the bondage of birth and death, or union of the soul with the Supreme Soul, which alone bestows everlasting happiness and eternal peace. Next, let us discuss in brief about the principle of four divisions or four classes known as Varna Chatushtaya of people in the human society. Those are Brahmana class, Kshatriya class, Vaishya class, and Shudra class. In this connection, it is most significant to note here that correct meaning and the correct interpretation of the Sanskrit word Varna is said here to be division or class or shreni of people in the human society according to one's nature or aptitude or swabhava or quality or guna, and duty or conduct or kind of work or karma, but not caste or jati of people in the society according to one's birth. It is said by the saints and sages to be division of work of people in the society. It is also said by the saints and sages to be classification of people but not castification of people. The philosophers, teachers, priests, pandits, ministers, counselors, etc., who have the aptitude for knowledge and wisdom are called the Brahmanas. They were looking after the spiritual and intellectual affairs of the country. The warriors who defend the country and protect the people and fight with enemies and invaders are called the Kshatriyas. They were in charge of political and defense work of the country. Those who carry on business and agriculture are called Vaishyas. They were taking care of the food and economic affair of the people of the country. The others who serve the said three classes of people are called the Sudras. They were doing the menial works in the society. This principle has its origin in the Vedas, the most ancient scripture of human race in the world, known as Purusha Sukta of the Rig Veda. There is a reference to the four classes of the people in the human society. It is described there that the Brahmanas came out from the face of the Lord, the Creator, the Kshatriyas from his arms, the Vaishyas from his thighs, and the Sudras from his feet. Also, Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita that the four Varnas were emanated by me by the different distribution of qualities and actions. Know me to be the author of them, though the actionless and inexhaustible. Chapter 4, verse number 13. Lord Krishna also states in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 18 the three qualities born of nature and the duties performed by the four classes of people to their nature or swabhava as under. There is no being on earth or again in heaven among the gods that is liberated from the three qualities born of nature. In chapter 8, it's the 18th, verse number 40. Of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas and Vaisyas, and also of Shudras, O Arjuna, the duties are distributed according to the qualities born of their own nature. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18th, verse number 41. Serenity, self-restraint, austerity, purity, forgiveness, and also uprightness, knowledge, realization, and belief in God are the duties of the Brahmanas, born of their own nature. This is said by Lord in Bhagavad Gita in chapter number 18th, verse number 42. Prowess, splendor, firmness, dexterity, and also not fleeing from battle, generosity, and lordliness are the duties of Kshatriyas, born of their nature, their own nature. It is depicted by Lord in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 18th, verse number 43. Agriculture, cattle rearing, and trade are the duties of Vaisyas or merchants, born of their own nature, and action consisting of service is the duties of Shudras, servant class, born of their own nature. In chapter 18th of Bhagavad Gita, verse number 44. Further, there are three qualities of gunas, as has been described in our holy scriptures. They are sattva, purity, rajas, passion, and tamas, or inertia. These are three qualities or gunas are stated to be found in varying proportions in the human beings. Those persons in whom sattva guna or purity preponderates are called as Brahmins or Brahmanas. In some persons in whom Rajaguna or passion is predominant are called Kshatriyas. In those persons in whom Tamas Guna or inertia is predominant are called Vaisyas or Shudras. It is also stated that when Sattva Guna is predominant in the mind of a person, he is called a Brahmana. When Rajaguna or Rajas prevails in his mind, the same person is called a Kshatriya. And when Tamas Guna predominates in his mind, he is called a Vaisya or a Shudra. Thus, even if the person is the same, he is called either a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaisya or a Shudra, depending upon the guna which is found predominant in his mind at a particular period of time. Accordingly, if one is a Brahmana by birth, having been born in a Brahmin family, but leads an immoral and unethical life, he cannot be called a Brahmana, but as a Shudra. Even if born in a higher or Brahmin family. Similarly, even if one is a Shudra, having been born in a lower or Shudra family, but if he leads a virtuous and pious life, he can be called as a Brahmana. There have been some wrong interpretations or aberrations of Varnashrama, and some have abused the caste system. One major aberration is that in course of time, the son of a Brahmana performs the duties of his father, following it as the family traditional occupation, irrespective of whether he is fit or becoming a Brahmana or not. This phenomenon continued generation after generation. Thus, the son of a Brahmana was called a Brahmana. The same phenomenon was observed in case of Kshatriyas, Vaisyas and Shudras also. As such, aberrations was observed in the original caste system based on distribution of qualities and actions and it was mistakenly believed that castes are determined not by different distribution of qualities and actions but chiefly by one's birth. But this notion is held as incorrect. This is a wrong interpretation of the wonderful caste system. It ought to be shunned. A prominent abuse of the caste system is that people belonging to some castes started considering themselves as superiority to others by mere birth without possessing the required qualities and consider others as inferior to them. For example, the Brahmanas think that they are superiors and the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras are inferior to them. Similarly, Kshatriyas think that the Vaishyas and Sudras are inferior to them, and Vaishyas think that Sudras are inferior to them. This consideration is against the original idea and spirit of the wonderful caste system, and therefore it ought to be shunned. Law of spiritual economics. The underlying principle in the caste system or Varna Dharma is division of labor. Rishis studied human nature carefully. They came to the conclusion that all men were not equally fit for all kinds of work. Hence, they found it necessary to allocate different kinds of duties to different classes of people according to their aptitude, capacity, or quality. The Brahmanas were in charge of spiritual and intellectual affairs. The work of political administration and defense was given to the Kshatriyas. The Vaishyas were entrusted with the duty of supplying food for the nation and administering its economic welfare. The Sudras did menial works. The Rishis felt all these needs of the Hindu nation and started the system of Varnas and Ashramas. This division of labor began in Vedic times. The Vedas taught that the Brahmanas were the brain of the society, the Kshatriya its arms, the Vaishya its stomach, and the Sudra its feet. There was a quarrel between the senses, the mind, and the prana as to who was superior. There was a quarrel amongst the different organs and the stomach. If the hands quarrel with stomach, the entire body will suffer. When prana departed from the body, all organs suffered. The head or stomach cannot claim its superiority over the feet and hands. The hands and feet are as much important as the stomach or head. If there is quarrel between the different castes as to which is superior, then the entire social fabric will suffer. There will be disharmony, rupture, and discord. A scavenger and a barber are as much important as a minister for running the society. The social edifice is built on the law of spiritual economics. It is nothing to do with superiority or inferiority. Each class contributes its best to the commonwealth or world solidarity. There is no question of higher and lower here. Swami Sivananda Saraswati also says that in the West and in the whole world also there is Varnasrama. Though it is not rigidly observed there, some Western philosophers have made a division of three classes. Those are philosophers, warriors, and masses. The philosophers correspond to the Brahmanas, warriors to Kshatriyas, and the masses to Vaishyas and Sudras. The system is indispensable to keep the society in a state of perfect harmony and order. Swami Sivananda Saraswati further says that regarding use and abuse of the caste system, the Hindus have survived many a foreign conquest on account of their caste system. But they have developed class jealousies and hatred in the name of the caste system. They have not got the spirit of cooperation. That is the reason why they were weak and disunited today. They have become sectarians in the name of the caste system. Hence, there is degradation in India. The caste system is indeed a splendid thing. It is quite flawless, but the defect came in form somewhere else. The classes gradually neglected their duties. The test of ability and character slowly vanished. Birth became the chief consideration in determining classes. All castes fell from their ideals and forgot all about their duties. Brahmanas became selfish and claimed superiority over others by mere birth without possessing due qualifications. The Kshatriyas lost their chivalry and spirit of sacrifice. The Vaishyas became very greedy. They did not earn wealth by honest means. They did not look after the economic affair of the people. They did not give charity. They also lost the spirit of sacrifice. Sudras gave up service. They became officers. They wished that others should serve them. The greed and pride of man have created discord and disharmony. There is nothing wrong in Varnashrama. It is arrogance and haughtiness in man that these have brought troubles. Man or the little jiva is imperfect. He is full of defects. He is simply waiting for claiming superiority over others. The Brahmana thinks that the other three castes are inferior to him. The Kshatriya thinks that the Vaishya and Sudra are inferior to him. A rich Sudra thinks that he is superior to a poor Brahmana or poor Kshatriya or poor Vaishya. At the present moment, the Varnashrama system exists in name only. It has to be rebuilt properly. Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Sudras who have fallen from their ideals and who are not doing their respective duties must do their respective duties properly. They must be educated on right lines. They must raise themselves to their original lofty level. The sectarian spirit must die. They should develop a new understanding height of love and devotion with a spirit of cooperation, sacrifice and service. Next, let us discuss in brief about the principle of four spiritual qualifications, sadhana chatushtaya, which one must acquire in order to enter into the spiritual pursuit for realization of the Supreme Being. Those are viveka or discrimination, vairagya or dispassion, sat sampat or sixfold virtues, and mumukshutva, strong yearning for liberation. The first spiritual qualification is viveka or discrimination. It means exercising of our intelligence for our own good and welfare. That is discrimination between righteousness, dharma, and unrighteousness or adharma. Truth, sat, or untruth, asat. Permanent, nitya, and temporary or anitya. Self or atma and non-self or anatma. The second spiritual qualification is vairagya or dispassion. Raga means attachment or asakti. Vairagya means detachment or anasakti. Vairagya means developing disgust or turning away from all that is ignorable, gross, petty and unworthy, and developing love for all that is noble and worthy. Vairagya means detachment towards the former and attachment towards the latter. The spiritual qualification is sat sampat or six virtues. Those are number one, sama, mental control and discipline. Practice of sama leads to control of the five Gyanendriyas, organs of knowledge. Those are ears, skin, eyes, tongue and nose. Second, dhamma, restraint of senses. Practice of dhamma leads to control of the five karmendriyas, organs of action. Those are speech, hand, feet, genitals and anus. Third, uparati. Uparati means self withdrawal or extreme abstinence. Fourth, titiksha. Titiksha means the power of endurance. 5. Shraddha. Shraddha is unshakable faith in the existence of Brahman, in the teachings of the Guru and in the scriptures. It also means faith in oneself. This is not blind faith, but it is based on accurate reasoning, evidence and experience. 6. Samadhana. Samadhana means mental balance, equipoise and calm. This fourth spiritual qualification is mumukshutva. Mumukshutva means burning desire for attaining liberation of soul from the bondage of births and deaths. Next, let us discuss in brief about the principle of law of action, karma phala siddhanta. The law of action or the law of karma is universal, inexorable and immutable. It is one of the fundamental doctrines of our Indian culture. It is therefore not only in Hinduism but also in Buddhism and Jainism. This law states that as you sow, so shall you reap. Accordingly, good actions or ethical actions or righteous actions or virtuous actions bestow good results, and bad actions or unethical actions or unrighteous actions yield bad results. This can be illustrated with an example. If one sows mango seed, there will be a mango tree and it will bear sweet mango fruits. But if one sows neem seed, there will be a neem tree and it will bear bitter neem fruits. Similarly, if one touches fire, his fingers will burn and he will feel the heat sensation. But if one touches ice, his fingers will feel coolness of the ice. Then let us discuss in brief about the principle of doctrine of rebirth, Punarjanma Siddhanta. The doctrine of rebirth is said to be a corollary to the law of action or law of karma. The fruits of actions or karmas, either good or bad, do not get exhausted without enjoying or suffering the same. And all actions or all karmas performed by one during his lifetime do not bear fruits in his present birth alone. Some actions or karmas bear fruits in subsequent births, in future births. Therefore, after one's death, he takes another birth or even a number of births in order to enjoy or suffer the fruits of his actions or karmas performed by him in his past births. Also, our holy scriptures and our holy saints and sages say that each human being, according to his action or karmas, has to take lakhs of births and deaths in different species of life upon the earth plane before the soul attains liberation from the cycle of births and deaths. As regards rebirth, Lord Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, just as in this body the embodied soul passes into childhood, youth and old age, so also does it pass into another body. The farm man does not grieve thereat. Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, verse number 13. Just as a man casts off worn out clothes and puts on new ones, so also the embodied self casts off worn out bodies and enters others which are new. Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, verse number 22. many births of mine have passed, as well as of thine, O Arjuna. I know them all, but thou knowest not, O Parantapa. Sculpture of Fauj. Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, verse number 5. As regards the practices of Indian culture or Bharatiya Sanskriti or Hindu Sanskriti, we discuss in this small discourse only one very important practice from amongst the numerous ones which are prevalent in different spheres of human activities and in different aspects of life in the day-to-day life of the Hindu people of this country, including births, marriages, deaths, food, fashions, dresses, hairstyles, dance, drama, art, music, scriptures, literature, worship, etc., and therefore which are diverse, wide ranging, and very large in numbers. This one practice covers the entire life period of the Hindu people from birth or even before birth to death and is called by the name Solaha Sanskara or 16 rites. Our various scriptures prescribe different type of rites and or sanskaras. However, the main 16 rites or sanskaras are: first, 1. Garbhadhana Sanskar, right before conception for purification of semen and womb. Number 2. Punsavana, right after Garbhadhana Sanskar and after conception for purification and protection of womb. Number 3. Simantonnayana Sanskar, right for physical and mental health of the child inside the womb. Number 4. Jatakarma Sanskar, right after child's birth for removal of the ill effects of the liquid food taken from the mother while remaining inside her womb and for good health of the child and the mother. Number 5. Namakarana Sanskar, right after the birth of the child for giving a name for increase in lifespan and radiance or teja and for acquiring success in laukika vyavahara or day-to-day dealings. Number 6. Niskramana Sanskar, right for bringing the child to outside for seeing the sun. 7. Annaprasana Sanskar, right for feeding the child with corn or solid food. 8. Chudakarma Sanskar, right for cutting the hair from the child's head for increase in strength, lifespan and radiance or tejas of the child. 9. Akshara Arambha Sanskar or Vidyarambha Sanskar, right for commencing education of the child. 10. The Upanayana Sanskar, right before commencement of study of child under a teacher by wearing the sacred thread or Jagyopavita for making him fit for study. 11. Kesanta Sanskar, right for shaving of the child's hair. 12. Samavartana Sanskar, right for termination of the student's celibate life after completion of study and for returning to home for entering into householder's life. 13. Vivaha Sanskar, marriage right for entering into household life. 14. Banaprastha Sanskar, right for commencement for forest dwelling. 15. Parivrajya Sanskar, right for complete renunciation of worldly connections and living the renounced life. 16th. Antyeshti Sanskar, death right for peace of the departed soul.